How we doing, everybody? UFC Thoughts here, and today, as you can tell by the title, I'm going to be talking about the dark horse in every division. Now, some of you may know what a dark horse is, like what the terminology behind that term is. If you don't know, here's a quick little definition. Dark horse, a candidate or competitor about whom little is known but who unexpectedly wins or succeeds. So, in the UFC, term-wise, this would be used to describe somebody who not a lot of people talk about, kind of an unknown guy, and just keeps winning and keeps succeeding. A while ago, for example, a big dark horse at welterweight was Vicente Luque after subbing Tyron Woodley and Michael Chiesa back to back, and then he kind of fell off a cliff. But these guys that I'm going to go over, in my humble opinion, and in my personal opinion, my thought process, I really do believe that these guys will go far. I'll do one per division. Let's start out with Flyweight, of course. As we all know, I kind of have a cool... I'm not filming on my phone anymore, so it's not going to look as, weird as it used to. Flyweight, we have number 15, Joshua the Fearless Van. Now, Josh, 13-2 as an MMA fighter, 6-1 in the UFC. Has wins over Zhalgas Zhumagulov, Kevin Borjas, Felipe Bunes, Edgar Shirez, Cody Durden, and Ray Saruya. He has lost in the UFC to Charles Johnson by KO, of course, at UFC Denver. I will go over upsides and downsides to every person. Joshua's upside, he has insane pocket boxing, just boxing overall, mixes it very well. Not a headhunter, goes to the body a shit ton. I love to see that. Will go to the legs every now and then, but will beat the body up, beat the legs up, and then go upstairs. Brick wall takedown defense. That is an improvement we have seen. In the Zhalgas Zhumagulov fight, he did have some moments where his takedown defense did look a little suspect. But against Ray Saruya, against Cody Durden, against even Felipe Bunes, his takedown defense has looked insane. So that's another thing. Decent offensive wrestling as well. We've seen him use his offensive wrestling in moments of terror. In his downside section, he is a small fighter for Flyweight, which is not a good thing. That is actually pretty fucking bad. I think Joshua's 5'4", 5'5", for Flyweight, in an era where most Flyweights are 5'6", 5'7", 5'8". They're taller. They're like the average man is what you're seeing at Flyweight now, which is kind of bullshit. And he does have a slight chin problem. We've seen him get hurt before. Of course, Charles Johnson knocked him out. But I don't forget that, Kevin Borjas did drop him in their fight. I didn't forget Edgar Shirez almost knocked him out in the first round and almost chinned him in the second. Those are things that are going to hold back Joshua Van in the eyes of many. And to be fair, those are problems that you can't really fix. Those are just, physical issues. But I do believe that he can keep improving in the actual, subjective aspects of MMA, which is his boxing, which is his offensive wrestling, which is his takedown defense. And he has improved vastly since his first fight against Zhalgas Zhumagulov, which was a split decision. Joshua, I love him to death. He's he's a favorite prospect of mine. I truly believe he will become something, and I at least will fight for a number one contender fight or a title one day. He's also young. 24 years old, 23 possibly. So look out for Joshua Van. We move to Bantamweight. Bantamweight's a little tricky. There's a lot of guys on the outskirts that I don't think a lot of people talk about. But there's a man, again, a number 15 contender that I think a lot of people just don't know he exists. Montel Quick Jackson. Montel Jackson is 14-2 as an MMA fighter, 8-2 in the UFC. And nobody talks about him. He has a lot of fights in the UFC. He's beat Brian Kelleher, Andre Sukumta, Adrian Colares, Ryan Strader, I believe is the guy's name, JP Bays, Julio Arce, Ronnie Yaha, and of course Damone Blackshear, which that win is already aging perfectly. Damone has won 2 fights in a row. He has lost to Ricky Simone and Brett Johns before, but that is mostly due to takedown defense issues, which is something I will get to. Upside, pretty crazy power. I'm pretty sure Montel Jackson already holds the record for most knockdowns at bantamweight in history. I think he has 14 knockdowns. That's not crazy at all, I guess. Solid shot selection. You'll notice about him, also defensively sound. If you look at some of his stats and shit, his output, his wrestling is also solid as well. He averages like 4 takedowns per 15 minutes. He averages 3 significant strikes landed per minute, and he only gets hit like twice per minute. He doesn't get hit a lot, actually. He's very big and rangy for the division, very long as well. The downside to Montel is, like I said, his takedown defense is sus. He has a sub 70, which in my opinion isn't the best. He is also inactive. He's a 1 a year kind of guy for the past 4 years. I think he fought twice in 2021, once in 2022, once in 2023, and once in 2024. And his output is on the lower end. Even though he doesn't get hit a lot, he doesn't throw much in the areas of the void where nothing is really going on. He kind of just allows the fight to take place. But I will bring up an extracurricular thing that I didn't know about until recently, until I was watching an MMA Guru video where he brought up that Montel Jackson has the same hand size as Francis Ngannou and Brock Lesnar. It's real. Look it up. Look up Montel Jackson hand size. You will see a photo of him like middle school, like flirting, where you put your hand like, how small is your hand? But his hand is like the same size as Francis Ngannou. And Francis, of course, is a 6'5" heavyweight, and Montel is a bantamweight. Crazy huge hands, fast as well. Quick is his nickname for a reason. Spelled wrong, I don't know why. It's just something. It's like a cool thing about him, I guess, because he's cool. He's cool, quick. Yeah, very, very powerful for bantamweight, and also just technical as fuck. So I think Montel Jackson needs to be talked about more. Has a fight booked against Daniel Marcos, I believe in Kansas City or Des Moines. I forget which of those 2 fight nights it's on. Is either on one of those 2. I believe that Montel Jackson will win that fight. I believe that he is a guy people need to talk about more. He's number 15, but no one even seems to realize he exists as a person. It's mostly due to his inactivity, but just watch a Montel Jackson fight. You'll have a blast. We move to featherweight. One of a couple dudes that is not a ranked fighter on this list that I will bring up. Steve Mean Machine Garcia. Steve is 17-5 as an MMA fighter, 6-2 in the UFC with wins over Charlie Ontiveros, Chase Hooper, Shailin Nerdembeki, Melquizel Costa, Sungwoo Choi, and Kyle Nelson. Now, there is something I need to bring up about all these fights. These are all wins by KO. Knocked out Charlie Ontiveros. Knocked out Chase Hooper. Knocked out Shailin Nerdembeki. Knocked out Melquizel Costa. Knocked out Sungwoo Choi. And knocked out Kyle Nelson. A couple of these were in the first round. I know Chase Hooper, Sungwoo Choi, and Kyle Nelson were all in the first round. Chase Hooper was like in 40 seconds. He has lost. He lost to Luis Pena, the violent Bob Ross guy. I think he got out-grappled in that matchup. And then he did get shinned by Mahashate, which isn't the best look if we're looking like in retrospect. That's kind of a shitty loss. But let's get to his upsides. Crazy power everywhere. He forces slugfests with everyone. And what I mean by that is you can't really fight a technical fight against Steve Garcia. He is just this huge 145er who charges at you, he lands 5 strikes per minute and hits fucking hard as shit. You're going to be forced into a shootout with him. You're going to be forced into something like that. And I like that. For his style, it really works because he has crazy power and also he goes for the finish everywhere. Look at the Kyle Nelson fight, for example. He starts tagging him up, and then I don't know if he hurt him or wobbled him and then took him down, but he just starts unloading elbows onto his face from the seated position against the cage where someone's on their butt but their back's against the fence. He just started unloading elbows on him, which was brutal, and ends up finding the finish there. Same with Charlie Ontiveros, I want to say. But he just slugs with everybody. There is a downside to it, though. Like I said, he's a killer be killed kind of fighter, which he got killed against Mahashate, but he's also killed a lot of people. His chin is unstable. He's been chinned a couple of times in his career. He's been hurt quite a few times. I remember Shailin Nerdembeki hurt him really fucking bad in like the first 20 seconds. He is also a headhunter. Doesn't really mix it up very well. Kind of a traditional, just like, he's like an older like style type of fighter, just shooting shots at the head and not really focusing on anything else. But yeah, Steve Garcia is huge for 145. He has some underrated wins outside of the UFC. One that comes to mind is his knockout of Chepe Mariscal. I don't know if you guys know who Chepe Mariscal is, but he's another guy you could honestly throw in here, but I've decided not to because I think Chepe Mariscal will eventually get beat. Consider, like, it's just one of those things where his style will eventually get figured out when he fights someone with good cardio. But Steve Garcia is kind of a weird one where he's so big for 145, he forces everybody into a gunslinger type fight that he can really knock out anybody. So we'll see what happens with Steve Garcia. Let's move to lightweight. Again, I believe this person isn't ranked at the moment. If he is, then no, he's not ranked. He's not ranked. He was ranked at one time, and then he got dropped off for no reason. He didn't lose. Of course, I'm talking about Joel El Fenomeno Alvarez. Joel Alvarez is honestly one of my favorite fighters in the UFC at the moment. He's 22-3 as a professional, 7-2 in the UFC with wins over Bernardo, Joe Duffy, Yakovlev, Thiago Moises, Mark Jacasey, Elvis Brenner, and Drakkar Klose. Most of those are by finish. I think, no, all of them are by finish because he has a 100% finish rate, including Elvis Brenner, who nobody else has finished in the UFC. He has lost before to Damir Ismagulov and Arman Sarukian. Not even bad losses if you really look at it, especially with the stylistic matchups and how Joel Alvarez looked back then. Let's get to the upside. Insane finishing potential. As I mentioned, a 100% finish rate, most of which by submission. Power, technical, stands up really tall, 6'3" for lightweight. You know, something light. Submission skill, like I said, I believe he has 17 wins by submission, and then like 5 KOs, I believe, or maybe 18-4. He's improving his takedown defense a lot, and what I mean by that is his takedown defense used to be so bad back in the day that I think prior to Mark Jacasey's fight with him, he had a 0% takedown defense and actually didn't defend a single takedown up to that point because he would kind of allow people to take him down and then try and find subs off his back. But then after that, he's just been like, well, I'm big and powerful. I can kind of learn to stuff takedowns and beat people up on the feet. So he started doing that. And, you know, he's huge for 155, like I said, 6'3". The downside is to Joel Alvarez. We have seen him get beat up pretty badly. The Arman Sarukian fight really comes to mind. Arman Sarukian beat the ever-living shit out of him. Now, that is Arman Sarukian, who is a #1 contender at lightweight, who we've seen now beat Charles Oliveira, Benil Dariush, and some other fellas. His chin is up high, so if you're fighting a very powerful striker at lightweight, which there are many of, who do just spam overhands, that could lead to a problem. And he can be bullied. We saw that in the Damir Ismagulov and Arman Sarukian fight. But I really believe Joel Alvarez is going to become something super special in the next coming months or next year and a half. You know, I don't know if he has a fight booked right now. I would love to see him get a fight booked. He is talking about moving up to welterweight as the weight cut to lightweight is sort of becoming a little bit too much of a problem for him, which honestly I think at welterweight he would probably be... but there are a lot of strong guys at welterweight. Lightweight's a pretty perfect division for him if the weight cut can become a bit more manageable. He just finishes everybody. He's so powerful, so technical. The Elvis Brenner fight, he bullied the shit out of him. Drakkar Klose hurt him with like a jab. Thiago Moises beat the shit out of him. Mark Jacasey ends up... That was a weird one where there was a clash of heads and then he found a Darce. But I truly believe Joel Alvarez can finish a fight anywhere. And I believe he will become something very special someday. You know, he is 32 years old. Kind of like a short window for opportunity, but we'll see what happens. Let's move to welterweight. The man on the thumbnail, you already know who I'm going to talk about, Michael Morales. Going to be fighting Gilbert Burns at UFC 315. Record as a professional, 17-0, undefeated fighter. There is a couple more in this video. Record in the UFC, 5-0, of course, with wins over Trevin Giles, Adam Fugit, Max Payne Griffin, Jake Matthews, and Neil Magny. Of course, he's 17-0, no losses on his record. Upside. I have a lot of upside on Michael Morales. Very young. He's 25 years old. Clearly improving from fight to fight. Decent cardio. Mixes it up very well. We've seen him prove himself against tough veterans. Max Griffin and Jake Matthews fight do come to mind. he was able to stand toe-to-toe with those two for 3 straight rounds, 15 minutes, and led to very little negative side effects for himself. Never really got hit all that cleanly, kind of used his range very well, just kind of stalked them, used his big frame for a welterweight to kind of just drop back and watch him. He's very powerful but patient. We've seen his power against guys like Trevin Giles and Adam Fugit, and of course Neil Magny, which he did finish him in the first round. And his frame is pretty wild for 170. I believe he's 6'2", 6'3" possibly, with like a 79, 80-inch reach. Very tall, like very like weird aura about him where he kind of just stands up tall and walks people down. He reminds me a little bit of like a Davison Figueiredo style at Flyweight, where he just stood straight up because he was so much bigger than everyone else that he kind of just stands up and doesn't really respect people all that much. Downsides to Michael Morales, which there's a downside to everybody. We've seen him get controlled for long periods of time. The Neil Magny fight does come to mind, even though he did finish him with a spinning elbow with follow-up ground and pound. He did get controlled against the fence for about 2 minutes and 30 seconds, maybe even longer. We've seen him get dropped before. I think it was Trevin Giles in his debut dropped him in like a minute, and then he immediately got back up. And Michael does something that I don't really like or like to see anybody else doing, which is Adesanyaing. What I mean by that is if you miss something and kind of like try to look cool for the cameras, or you're like switching stances, but you're kind of like, you're trying to look cool, you're clip farming almost in a way, you know what I mean? Like, there's other fighters that do that, and I'm just like, come on, dude, focus on the fucking fight, you know what I mean? He does that sometimes, and it does kind of make me mad, but I will forgive it because he's a badass. Michael Morales fighting, like I said, Gilbert Burns at 315. I believe he wins that just based on young versus old. Also, Michael Morales, his takedown defense is really good. He has, I believe, one of the highest takedown defenses in welterweight history. I think it's a 92-96. So, well, technically, Kamaru at welterweight still has a 100% takedown defense, but you get the point. He has one of the highest. But I believe Michael Morales has a very high ceiling. I believe he will hit that ceiling. And in my hot takes video, if you remember that, I did say I believe he's a better prospect than Carlos Prates. I stand by it. Let's move to middleweight. Middleweight has a lot of underrated guys throughout here. I was going to pick somebody who is ranked number 15. That is Roman Kopylov. But then I remembered that there's a man above him who did beat him. And I have, even though I hate him, I have to give credit to Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. I'm not a huge fan of his. I've said it before, I've wanted to see him lose for a while now, but it's gotten to the point where I have to respect his ability as a mixed martial artist, and he is a problem. Alright, I'm done trying to act like he's not. I've tried to say he's not fucking good, he's so easy to finish, this, that, and the other. Let's get into the point. Anthony Fluffy Hernandez, 14-2-1, one no contest. That one being a one no contest, of course. His record in the UFC, 8-2. Wins over Jung Young Park, Rodolfo Vieira, Josh Fremd, Marc-Andre Barrio, Edmund Shabazian, Roman Kopylov, Michel Pereira, and Brendan Allen. 2 times, one in the regional scene as well. He has lost. Oh yeah, by the way, I think most of those are finishes besides the UFC Brendan Allen win. I believe that he's beat all those guys by finish, if I'm not mistaken. Or Josh Fremd he took to a decision, actually. He lost to Marcus Perez, who, if you don't know, is the guy that Dreykus knocked out in his debut with, he went for a spinning elbow and Dreykus caught him behind the ear. And then Kevin Holland in 2020 just got finished really early in that one. Upside. Cardio Maniac has probably the best cardio for a style I've seen at middleweight in a very long time, considering how much grappling he does. Just watch the Michel Pereira fight. I know not a lot happens, but dude, he beat the shit out of Michel Pereira. Insane grappling, very technical, will just drag people in deep waters, drown them. He will drown people by just holding certain positions. He will find this modified guillotine that'll kind of bring people down, and he'll bring them down, and then that'll give up their back, and he'll just slide his way on their back, beat the shit out of them. He finds finishes everywhere. He beats the shit out of people, and it pisses me off, because he's not even in shape. He's not even in shape. He's a flabby guy, but he's just so cool. Downside to Anthony Hernandez. He can be sometimes a little silly, give up certain positions by trying to go for something. Like I said, he will usually technically like grapple very soundly, not making any mistakes. He's made mistakes before, like in the Marcus Perez fight and against Brendan Allen in the first round. He kind of just made like a stupid mistake of trying to go for the back and sliding off. He can be finished early. He's weak to the body. We've seen him get hurt to the body in like his last 4 fights, except the Brendan Allen one. Michel Pereira hurt him bad to the body. Roman Kopylov hurt him bad to the body. Kevin Holland hurt him way bad to the body. Basically finished him from body shots, like a knee to the body. But he powers through it. He's got a lot of heart, and he drowns people. And I can't act like he's not good. I can't act like he's not good anymore. He's a good fighter. Anthony Hernandez is a problem at middleweight, and until somebody can match his cardio, match the output, defend the takedowns, and not get drowned by the 15 takedowns per... He's basically Merab at middleweight, but his striking is also improving as well. That's something like... Even in the Brendan Allen fight, we saw him go for like 5-punch combinations that were kind of tough. So I'm like, damn, okay, Anthony, all right, bro, you're kind of improving. But yeah, fine. Anthony Hernandez is the dark horse in middleweight. We move to light heavyweight, and I've talked about this dude before. I love him. He's my favorite light heavyweight prospect. Umar Sy, the Frenchman. Record in the UFC, 11-0. He is not in the UFC, that's his professional record. He's 2-0 in the UFC with wins over Tuco Tokos and Da Un Jung. He has no losses, of course, considering that he's undefeated. There's a lot of upside to Umar Sy. Very solid everywhere, very solid mixed martial artist. Sound in the grappling, sound in the striking, huge frame for light heavyweight, 6'4", 81-inch reach. He knows when to mix it up very well. He's just like kind of a marauder, and he knows when to mix it up. Like in the Da Un Jung fight, the striking combinations were a little close in that one, so he decided to grapple him and wrestle fuck him essentially for the rest of the fight. He found a finish against Tuco Tokos, which we can't say the same about Navajo Sterling. Whoa. But, yeah, Umar Sy, very powerful, very strong fella at light heavyweight. Downside, I legit just have that he is a French guy. So he might just start sucking out of nowhere for no reason. We'll see what happens when he fights Alonzo Menafield, of course, which is going to happen, I believe, in Atlanta, I think is the fight night that's rumored. With Rose Namajunas as well featuring on there. We'll have to see what happens there. I believe Umar Sy beats Alonzo Menafield. We'll see what happens. He's huge for what light heavyweight. I think he's a blue chip prospect. He's just very solid everywhere. I want to see him succeed because I've hyped him up so much to the point where he can't lose or else I'll look like a dumbass. So Umar Sy, I believe, will rise the ranks very soon. He's already getting a top 15 fight. In just his 3rd fight in the UFC, I believe he can finish Alonzo Menafield. We'll have to see what happens. Let's move to the final weight division. Heavyweight, of course. There's like 3 guys you can really put here. Volkov would be a very good one, but I believe Volkov, like I said, can possibly go on a downfall spiral. You could do Taliesin Teixeira if you want, I guess. I'm going a guy just a bit below him. Kennedy, African Savage, and Zechikui. Kennedy, 14-5 as a record, 8-5 in the UFC, probably the ugliest record in the UFC up to this point, with wins over Stosic, Carlos Olberg, Marquez, Carl Roberson, Ion Cutelaba, Devin Clark. Those are all at light heavyweight. His wins at heavyweight, though, are Chris Barnett and Lucas Brzeski, or Dresky, I forget if it's Dresky. His losses in the UFC have all been at light heavyweight. He's only had 2 fights at heavyweight. He lost to Paul Craig, Da Un Jung, Nicolay Negremariano, Dustin Jacoby, and Ovince St. Preux. There is a lot of upside for Kennedy at at heavyweight, for example. Lighter man skill. We've already seen it in both of his fights. He's super big for light heavyweight, and he's heavyweight, fuck. And he's very fast. Very fast guy, very technical striker, huge frame, 6'5" at heavyweight is nuts, very powerful. He has grappling in his back pocket. Like, people forget, man. He subbed Ion Cutelaba, and he's decent when it comes to grappling. He just prefers to strike with people. fast and slick. We saw that against Chris Barnett. We saw that against Lucas Dresky as well, where he kind of just slipped a bit out of the way and then caught him with a very laxed left hook. Downside, we've seen him get KO'd a couple of times. Of course, Dao Jung knocked him out. Dustin Jacoby knocked him out, right? We've seen this happen before. He does leave his chin in the air because he is such a tall fighter that he does kind of just get lazy at moments. I believe Kennedy Nzechukwu, he has a fight booked, I believe, in the next 2 weeks. I believe he fights Martin Buday at UFC Vegas 105. I believe, right? I think that's when he's fighting Martin. I believe he wins that. I believe Martin Buday is just a fat heavyweight. And Kennedy, he has skill. Like, he's not just a fat oaf at heavyweight. Like, he is good. He does have potential. So I believe the weight move up will only help him in this case. Ryan Spann was supposed to be like that, but he's stupid. He's just very dumb. Kennedy Nzechukwu, I believe, is actually a smart, technical fighter at heavyweight, and I believe that he will rise the ranks very soon. We'll see what happens against Martin Buday. He's ranked 15th right now, which is, we've seen that happen a couple times in this video. I've put the number 15 contender, but that's just because that's just where they happen to be. But Kennedy Nzechukwu, I believe he will become something very soon. He has all the skills to pay the bills at heavyweight, especially considering that he's big for the division, and also isn't just like a wild swanging and banging kind of fellow. He will be very technical when it comes down to it. So, and he also doesn't have the weight cut. He can just kind of walk in there and not have to cut all the weight, not have the chin problem that he did at light heavyweight. We've seen him get hit with some shots at heavyweight already by Lucas Dresky, and he took it pretty well. So, yeah. Watch and see. That's all I'm going to say. Watch and see what happens with Joshua Van, Montel Jackson, Steve Garcia, Joel Alvarez, Michael Morales, Anthony Hernandez, Umar Sy, and Kennedy Nzechukwu. Yeah, that's the video. If you like the video, give it a like. Who are some guys that you believe are dark horses in every division? Who do you believe has the highest ceiling? And who you believe will unexpectedly become something very great in the coming months, possibly coming years? But yeah, if you like the video, like I said, give it a like. If you want more content like this, subscribe. I'm constantly trying to improve my content. So, yeah, I'll see you guys in my next video. Peace.